All right, welcome back to Skills in Session. I am Coach Tina Meinhardt.
And I'm Travis Brown.
And today we're covering error detection and correction. So it's something that is really important as a mountain bike coach, but something newer coaches struggle with. So with most instructors early on, we're trying to fix everything, but really when someone's having an issue, there's complicated steps happening. So we have our three-phase skills and our five-phase skills, but that can be overwhelming. So we want to take some steps to try to simplify it. So some methods that we use are we're identifying the goal of the rider and we're looking at different considerations to make these corrections. And then we're going to go over some example scenarios to help kind of walk through how do we error detect and correct step by step.
And like Tina said, air detection and correction is a skill that we need to develop on our own as coaches. And so I always like to start by thinking about what is the goal of the rider? Is this their first time out riding? Have they had their bike for 3 weeks and they're just trying to like build a little bit of confidence? Because the feedback that I'm going to provide to that rider is different than the rider who is working on gap jumps or tabletop jumps or like high speed descending, that sort of stuff. So get to know your rider, and we can do this by asking some questions early on about their riding. We can observe their riding and see maybe like what is best for them, or get to know them by asking about their engagement with like racing and that sort of thing. All of those details can help us identify the goal. So most of the riders that I work with, I don't work with a ton of racers, but most of the riders that I work with are working on slow speed technical skills or simply being stable. So a lot of those riders just want to feel safe. They want to build more confidence. And I mean, of course, want to build their skills as well. But so when I'm looking at a rider who just wants to build confidence, maybe I'm not going to push them really far in the progressions, but instead just spend more time working on some of the easier progressions, because that's where confidence is built by appropriately progressing the skill as needed. And if we're progressing the skill appropriately and we're saving that progression for the time where they are ready for it, the corrections that we're going to have to make are likely to be smaller because they've built so many good practices in the earlier progressions of the skill. So if we don't know what our goal is, it's really, really hard to find what that one correction is going to be that improves their riding in the way that they want to. So, easy question to ask at the start of the session during introductions. What's your goal for this session? What can we do to help you get the most out of it? Um, get to know your riders. That's like one of my biggest things.
Mhm. Yeah, super important, obviously. So we're going to talk about the three filters. So what do we fix first? Filter number one is safety. So if something is unsafe, definitely have to correct that first. So BICP, we always start with the three essentials. So number one, making sure that they're looking ahead. They're always looking where they want to go. Number two, that they're riding with that index finger covering their brakes. If they're not using their brakes or they're using just their front brake or just their rear brake, that's going to be a little bit unsafe. And then number three, riding with level pedals or level cranks. Because if they're riding in the flamingo stance, they're going to strike a rock or a root or something. So we're always addressing those first. With this three essentials, as mountain bikers, we're always trying to maintain stability, balance, and control. So some examples on that, like I kind of just mentioned with the three essentials, someone has locked arms on a steep terrain, they're not being loose, they have no brake modulation, or they're looking down at their front tire on a descent. So if safety is compromised, nothing else matters. So definitely address that first.
I had a really fun conversation. I have this conversation in most of the level one courses that I teach these days. Um, but we were talking about roll downs, like a basic 12-inch roll down, kind of a steep change in terrain. And often on that, there's like some timing things that can lead to like poor performance of the skill or less than ideal performance of the skill. But everyone is like, what do we got to do? Like, what should I stop first? And I was like, well, if our rider is coming on to our like land wave or our 1 foot drop feature with unequally weighted pedals, we are we are actively trying to stop them. I mean, we're not like touching their bike, but we're like stop up on the feature because that is
Yeah.
a big risk, you know. And that I didn't even think about this as we were prepping for this, Tina, but like to quickly talk about providing corrections, whether that's in like while they're in the cone zone, like actively riding, versus after they exit the cone zone, those safety problems or those safety errors, I'm going to correct those in the cone zone or like the moment that I see them. Whereas, if they maybe could have been in a lower ready position for a particular skill, I might wait till they get out of the cone zone and like give them their full opportunity to try that skill.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense.
Awesome. Well, looking at the next filter that we're going to use is we refer to it as like the biggest lever. And that is going to be what's that one thing that will make the biggest difference in our participants riding. And knowing what that is really hard, and that's why we're here talking about it today. And I always like to default back to the phase analysis for the skills. So all of our skills, like every skill in mountain biking, can be broken down into different phases based on the complexity of the skill. We have the three phase skills, which are skills that, for example, like riding straight lines, is where we have a specific setup position that we want to be in, tall ready. We have a particular move, which is going to be in this skill, use bike body separation as needed to maintain balance in a straight line. And then we have the follow through where we return to a ready position for whatever's coming up on the trail after. So those three phase skills, I'm looking at the setup, I'm looking at how the order in which they initiate the movement itself and the follow through after that. The five phase I like a lot more because it does break more advanced skills down into smaller components, which is awesome. So the five phases of our five phase skill analysis is the setup, the initiation of the move, the force producing move, the critical instant, and the follow through. So we're going to look at this five phase model from the perspective of, or by looking at a front wheel lift, basic front wheel lift. This is a skill just to like get everyone on the same page. We're coming in a tall ready position. We are going to load our bike through our feet. We're going to explode our body up high afterwards, and we're going to pull on our handlebars while that bike is light and bend our knees as that bike comes up to us. Load, explode, pull, bend knees are our keywords for that skill.
Yeah.
So our setup for this skill, tall ready position. So if I see the rider coming in even before the cone zone and they've got a deep bend in their elbows, that's going to prevent them from being able to load that bike effectively. And that's going to be the first thing that I fix because they're not in the body position that's going to allow for the most power to find success with this skill. So now they're coming in tall ready. We got that air taken care of. Awesome. I'm looking next at how they initiate the skill. So for the front wheel lift, the initiation of the skill is the load itself, where we're compressing our suspension. And if I see we're able to compress that suspension much more through our legs than just in our hands. So if I see the rider like throwing their body down towards their handlebars to squish their front suspension more, that's the correction I'm gonna go to next is uh, load through your feet more because we can squish both the front and the rear suspension more through our legs. So that'd be my next step from there. And again, like these order of phases are going by correcting from the beginning, moving to the end of the skill is what's going to help simplify the movements and get that rider making big changes.
Right.
So in our force producing move for this skill, this is, ideally it's not like a crazy amount of force, but well, in portions of it, but we're going to want a big, tall explode with a active bending of the elbows and allowing our knees to bend as that bike gets pulled up towards us. And so if I'm seeing the wheel not getting very high off the ground, or if I'm seeing like the handlebar is going a little wonky, I'm going to start thinking about it provided I've already fixed the setup and the initiation. I'm going to start thinking about that force producing move. And if that front wheel is not getting very high, maybe they need to explode higher or if they need to actively pull more on those handlebars. Um, it's going to depend on the rider, but that's going to change what I look at in that rider as they're coming through. So I've checked these other things off the list, and now I'm like, okay, did they explode all the way up? Yes or no? Okay. Did they pull? Did I see their elbows bend? Yes or no? And I think an important thing to keep in mind is like sometimes we can emphasize some components over a skill over another, but I'm using these phases as a checklist for me to say yes, they did that or no, they did not do that. And then I'm going down the list in order of the phases. So we've got their front wheel coming up high off the ground appropriately to clear the feature. Um, and it comes back down with stability, and that's going to be our critical instant is when that wheel comes off the ground. That's where we found that success. And when we're looking in the follow through, where are their eyes? You know, are they maintaining the intended line afterwards? Are they leaning off to one side of their bike because they pulled the handlebars in a weird way? Um, that's something that I will absolutely correct. But if I'm seeing errors earlier in the phases of these skills, that's where I'm gonna likely start.
Mhm.
Tina, where do you normally start, or does it depend on, yeah, your knowledge of the rider? Where do you fall in to find the biggest lever?
I mean, I think for me, it's always the three essentials because if something's not right with those, then nothing else is right typically, or not, or it's not as safe. But for me personally, I start with the feet. And again, that kind of comes, I mean, yeah, we've got our setup. Are you tall? Are you low? And that stuff you can see pretty easily. Or once you get some experience, you can. But I look at the feet. If they're loading with one foot off balance, the load's going to be unequal. Everything else kind of comes from there because you really want that solid platform of the level feet. And then everything else on top of that is kind of extra things to look at. So I start with the feet. I kind of work up, okay, knees, hips. Are they loading through their legs versus are they just hinging and pushing on the handlebars? Um, and same thing like with the explode. Are they extending the hips, getting tall? Are they next arms? Are they pulling equally? Or yeah, is that front tire kind of starting to wobble, go sideways, get squirrely? Yeah, if it's not, if it's starting to turn, then address, okay, we need to be pulling equally. So that's where I start. Some people they do it opposite. They start head to toe. But again, our feet, those are our most important assets in mountain biking. It's the foundation where everything comes from, feet on up. So that's what I personally do.
Absolutely. And yeah, like whatever method, it's like it's nice to bounce between methods, but as you're
Yeah,
getting in the groove, like assess riders from feet up every time if that's the option that you choose, because then you're more likely to catch those errors. Sweet. Yeah, that's good. I don't know if I have enough attention, or like enough folk, or like if I can keep my brain on track enough to only look at like to have the same system now, like now that I'm like been coaching for a bunch of years, like my eyes end up bouncing kind of all over the place.
right.
Um, which is fun. I mean, I don't know. It keeps it exciting, if nothing else.
Yeah. I
As I
mean, and
try to catch all the errors.
even if it does, like you still have like the three phase or the five phase skill. It's like, okay, go back to that. Setup, yes, good. And okay,
Yep.
initiation of the move. Okay, that looks good. And then go from there. Also like, taking video. As coaches, depending on how large your group is, but even when my with my small groups of 6 to 7 riders, I take video, especially if there's someone that's struggling and you want to be able to go and see. Take a video, take a slow motion video, whatever, and scrub through and look, and you can check and show your riders, hey, look at your feet, they were uneven, or your timing was off, or whatever it is. That's a really good way if you're getting overwhelmed too, as a newer coach, to really kind of go through all of the phases, the three and the five, and to really see these things pop out.
Oh, Tina, thank you for bringing up videos.
Oh
So
yeah,
important.
yeah.
And I did do I had a talks with Travis with a few other instructors that's on our archive about using videos as well with some like things that they are incredibly essential for, as well as some things we want to be aware of as we're using them. But yeah, like hugely, hugely important.
Yeah, very valuable.
Awesome. And cool. Well, do you have any other thoughts to add on our the biggest lever discussion, or you want to talk about cognitive load?
Yeah, let's move on to cognitive load. So how much can your riders process? Obviously, we've got these three phase, or yeah, your riders, and you as a coach too. We have the three phase, we have the five phase, lots of things going on, especially with our more advanced skills. That you might have like four or five corrections that you want to give your rider, but no matter the skill level of the rider, it depends on the person how much they're actually able to take and absorb and make those changes. So try to keep it simple. Again, I always address three essentials. They need to be getting those solid before moving on to anything else. And then, yeah, find one thing, that biggest lever, and make the change there. And then, Travis, what would you do if you're giving one cue and you think it's an important cue and your rider isn't able to make the change? Do you
Mm.
keep trying to, get them to do it, or do you have to move on to something else?
It's so complicated. Okay, so it would depend, of course, because everything that we do as coaches depends.
Mhm.
But I think that if I'm not getting, if my attempt to verbally communicate the errors that I'm seeing or what I want them to do differently isn't working, I would go to a static hold first.
Yeah.
Okay, so there, okay, this is like a choose your own adventure now. So Tina, I chose a static hold. Now what happens?
Yeah, static holds are great because then you can have the rider stationary and you can make these little adjustments.
Did I fix the error?
Potentially not though,
Okay, all right.
because
So we,
yeah.
oh, I love this. Okay, all right. So the error was not fixed. Um, my next thought is so okay. If I'm not finding success, okay. So I mentioned earlier, and I'm sure we've all experienced this in our own riding. There's more than just one way to find success on a bike,
Mhm.
and especially with mountain biking. And so, if the one error, if they're not able to correct the one error after like three, like maybe four attempts, including a static hold, 4 or 5 attempts. We don't want those bad habits to get ingrained. So
Right.
personally, I would probably move on to something different. And we will touch on this a little bit more later. But there's a couple movements within the manual front wheel lift where we can kind of pick and choose based on our rider what is going to be most, what could be most beneficial. And if they're able to execute one of the two, it could still find them success.
Mhm.
So I think I would move on. And to
Yeah.
defend my decision, I would I would do so to avoid building bad habits, but also if we try something, okay, so when I'm riding trials, like I have this rock, I'm trying to get on this rock. If it takes me more than 7 attempts, I'm like done, like
Yeah.
with trying that thing. So to keep our rider engaged and keep them positive, um, I would probably try to pick something else. I don't think that I would be like, well, that didn't work. We're going to try something different. I'd probably find a little bit more like
Yeah.
soft way to say that. But
Right.
I think I would try, look at a different thing.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Because I mean, yeah, same. There's plenty of stuff, skills that I'm still working on. Recently, I decided, hey, I finally want to learn to wheelie. And I have a coach now that I'm working with, and I got a really good small piece of feedback, and it actually works. But I'm like, okay, before my coaching clinics or before I go for a ride, just practice for 5 minutes. And yeah, can I wheelie it? Heck no, it's going to take a lot of practice, but I don't want to get fatigued with it because when I do a longer session, and let's say I'm like, okay, 20 minutes, I have to practice wheelies or manuals, whatever it is, I'm going to get tired. I'm going to get fatigued. So making sure when we are giving this feedback and they're not correcting it, like stop and look at video. Give the riders a break. But yeah, after four or five tries, if they're not able to make the change, like they're just going to get frustrated, they're going to get tired. Cognitively, they're going to get overloaded. So moving on from them or from that that skill maybe is a good idea. And you can
Totally.
always come back to it later or say, hey, today we're not going to work on this, but let's come back next week. Or, if it's a private lesson, there's plenty of stuff we can work on. You can get them to come back for a private lesson, something like that. It's a
Absolutely.
good idea.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing to add to like the cognitive load discussion, if our riders don't feel like they're making progress, or if our riders don't feel engaged and excited, they're not going to listen to us nearly as much. And
Mhm.
so keeping it positive and keeping their like, their mental state like positive is
Yeah.
incredibly important. And it comes back to using positive critique positive for
Mm.
delivering feedback. This was like one of I was like it warmed my heart when this happened. I was out in West Virginia. I was teaching a like a family how just like an intro to mountain biking lesson, and someone who was like just drinking beer in the beer garden, kind of like a little ways away, they came up to me after the lesson and she's like, I think I'd like for you to teach me that class that you just
Oh,
did. I was like,
cool.
what?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, you're just like way too positive, and I think I need that. And I
Yeah.
was like, finally, someone who needs my level of positivity. That's
Yeah.
great. Um, and so
Awesome. Yeah.
it makes a big difference for
Yeah.
people to just stay excited and to want to try harder for you as the coach.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
Scenarios?
All right. Let's move on to a couple scenarios.
All right. Oh, I'm purple. Okay, sorry. All right, here we go. Our first scenario, we're going to talk just about beginner level descending. We talk about this in our level one courses. It's where we are low ready, we have our bracing leg, we're modulating our brakes, and we have our hips back as needed for the terrain. And so we have a rider. I see them coming into the cone zone. I'm going to start from the feet up. So what I see from the feet up, I see kind of irregular braking. Tires are skidding a tiny bit. As I get higher, I see that their arms are like totally maxed out. They're really far back. And then I see their helmet facing down, um, because their parent told them 20 years ago to get back on their bike. And so we see, yeah, stiffness in the arms, we see eyes down and late braking. So, what would I fix first? We go back to our filters, right? Safety. I mean, the braking could be a concern, but seeing where we're going, getting those eyes up will be the most important thing. Um, Sometimes I've asked riders to take their glasses off so I can see where they're riding, provided it's not like way too sunny or whatever.
Right.
I've absolutely asked them to do that. And so, yeah, fix the eyes first. They need to see where they're going. They need to know what's coming up ahead. And then from there, if this is okay. And Tina, I'm curious what your thoughts are because now the eyes, that's an easy fix for me.
Right.
Between fixing the being too far back and the brake modulation. So if their improper braking isn't increasing the chance of risk substantially, I might go to I might, have them be more centered on their bike and kind of get a good bend in their elbows um, before the braking. But it's got to be that the braking isn't causing problems. Where do you fall on that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm all about body position first. It's our ready positions, the tall to low, but we want our hips to be centered over our feet. So depending on, where you're doing the skill and what the decline is or what the descent's like, it will make a difference where, how far the hips are back. But if it's not much of a decline and their hips are way far back, that's going to put way too much weight on the back tire, not enough weight on the front tire, their braking is going to be all messed up anyway. So making sure that they're in a good, solid, ready position for whatever the terrain is to match the terrain. Like to me, that would be the next thing after vision. And then once they're in that good position, then they can properly apply the brakes or get feedback about how to properly apply the brakes.
Yeah, and I like that. Thank you for bringing up the like impact of body position on braking. If I'm seeing their front tire skid, like they could be softer on the brakes and it might stop it from skidding, but body position is going to fix that first. Like could fix both things.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. I agree.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Next scenario, switchbacks, maybe for an intermediate rider. So navigating a downhill switchback, which this is honestly a tough skill. I know here in Colorado, we have a lot of really, really difficult switchbacks. But yeah, let's say we're doing a clinic. They're braking hard in the turn. They're taking an inside line and they're hesitating, or they're not committing. So they're bailing early. They're putting a foot down. They're like, nope, I'm not doing it. Um, so what do we do first? For me, the line choice. because that plays a bigger role into how they're going to be braking and the commitment or hesitation, lack thereof. So making sure, yeah, they're setting up. Maybe they're doing a little pre-turn to get into the switchback, but either way, that they're taking an outside line so they have enough room to navigate that switchback with their, big long bikes. And then after the line choice is corrected, then it's like, okay, so why are they braking hard in the switchback? Um, Obviously, it's because they're not managing their speed prior to the switchback. So we want to maybe set up some cones and put them out like, hey, I want you to be applying both the front and rear up to these cones. And then, okay, now we're entering the switchback. You're still going a little too fast. Let's apply maybe just a little rear brake to manage your speed as you're entering that apex of the switchback. And then, all right, you're looking through. You're not hesitating anymore. You're committing to the line. Let's look for the exit and ride out fast. So those are some things that I would fix first. So a good line to set you up for success for your bike to navigate through, managing that brake modulation before, and then committing to it. And honestly, like the commitment, that's half the battle. I know for me it is. There's some switchbacks that I'm not able to get on a couple of our trails, and I'm like, oh man, I know I can do it. But it's like mentally, why am I not doing it? And so that's something I think is worth discussing in a future episode is like that mental aspect of mountain biking and why we're committing to things and not committing to other things. Is there anything else you would address in switchbacks?
No, not on switchbacks, but that does sound like a super fun
Yeah,
discussion topic. I am absolutely here for that.
yeah. There's a lot to discuss there.
Oh yeah. Awesome. So the last scenario that we're gonna talk through, I alluded to it earlier, is gonna be about the manual front wheel lift. So in our rider, so manual front wheel lift, just to get everyone on the same page, holding the front wheel off the ground for more than just a temporary amount of time to clear a puddle or go through some rollers, something like that. We're going to come in tall ready. We're going to load through our hands and our feet. We're going to explode our shoulders up and back as our hips move back. We're going to lead with our heels by dropping both of our heels and lengthening our legs. Lots of steps in there. Jump into the Talks with Travis archive. We did a skill breakdown on the manual. If you want to get more in depth, super, super good idea. Um, what we see in our rider as they're coming through our cone zone. The front wheel's not getting very high off the ground. We see their shoulders really rounded, their legs are really bent, and their toes are pointed. And so there's a bunch of different things that their eyes are up, so that's good. Bunch of different things that we could go through. This is a skill that we do teach in a couple of phases or a couple different steps leading up to it. So this is after we've put the whole skill together. So the first thing that I would go to, noticing their shoulders being rounded and like really far back, I would encourage them to explode their shoulders up more and have like a nice proud chest. That'd probably be my first one, because that forces everything a little bit further back. Let's say we correct that. The bent legs and the toes pointed. Depending on our rider, this could be either one could make the difference in their manual. If we have a really tall, lanky rider, I might first encourage them to extend their legs more because that's an easier movement than it is to drop our heels and lead with our heels. So I might encourage that rider to extend their legs more. If I'm working with a short rider or a shorter rider, or if my correction of lengthening the legs doesn't make a difference, I would focus really hard on those heels. I found especially for short riders, lowering or leading through those heels really pushes that rear wheel out where we want it to be for the manual underneath us. And that's one of those skills where it's like, you know, getting riders to point their toes when they're manualing can be tough. Like it's a weird thing to feel. We're flexing one part of our body and lengthening the other part, like all in the same limb, and it's super weird. Um, so that's one where like, okay, I can't get this rider to lead with their heels.
Mhm.
I'm gonna try to get them just straighten their legs out all the way. That was the kind of like if I've given up on not given up, but if we haven't had success with this correction, I would try this next one. There's a bunch of different skills where we make those choices, and sometimes like We pick the one that suits the rider's body type, suits their riding style.
Mhm.
Um, or like there's not a huge amount of risk in choosing either of those two corrections in this scenario. It doesn't cause a ton more risk to our rider. So
Yeah.
there's no harm in like, okay, let's try this one out. All right, we need to shift focus because that didn't work.
hmm Yeah. I mean, yeah, these more advanced skills like the manual, there's so much going on and they're really hard. I mean, like I'm a pretty good rider, but yeah, like on my, really long enduro bike, it is hard to manual. And so that's something that I've been like getting frustrated with where I have to, yeah, sit down with my coach and say, hey, like there's all of these steps. What do you think I need to focus on the most? But it can be really hard and again, frustrating for your riders if something's not clicking. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I mean, I feel like with these skills, like there's so much to look at, but just trying to find little like pieces of feedback that you can give where things are clicking, that's where you're going to be successful and your rider's going to be successful. But it can be difficult with something, yeah, like the manual.
So the one thing that I had to focus on for the manual was the heels. That was the hardest thing for me. Do you have your one thing picked out?
I think for me, it's the eyes up. Same with the wheelies, like eyes up, proud chest, shoulders back, but also with the manual, yeah, driving those heels and with my jumping, trying to boost jumps more. It's like I'm still hesitating and I want to point my toes because that brings us back down, but
Yeah.
we don't want to be doing that. So yeah, it's trying to think, okay, heels down, drive and push that front tire up and out. But I also, I get frustrated too with myself trying to practice where it's like, okay, let's think of one thing and see if I can make any adjustments. Like, okay, tall chest this time. If
Mhm.
that's not working, then I'm going to move on to, okay, think about the heels, think about the heels. And I do it all the time. But yeah, it's finding what works and where those little changes, you're able to be successful in making them.
Totally. Awesome. Well,
Uh,
yeah, that's like, and the every coach is going to have some different strategies for what works for them, you know. Like I know that when I've made an error in the past, it's really easy for me to see other people making that error. And
yeah,
sometimes we just fix what we see first
yeah,
and then go from there. Because every time a rider comes through, we don't see every error that they make. We hopefully see one or two, but
right.
we don't see every single one. And so,
Yeah.
having those ones that think about your riding and how the things that we've had to work on intentionally and look for those things in your riders because like me as a rider, I am not the only person to struggle with leading through my heels on a
Oh, yeah.
manual, like super common. And so if you've experienced it, chances are other people have experienced it too.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah, so that was a great episode talking about error detection and correction. So just to recap, first is identifying the goal of your rider. So when you're going through all the skills one by one, what is the goal for them for that session? And then considerations for correction. So our different filters. So our safety. What's number two?
Number two, identifying
Oh,
the lever.
which one's going to make the biggest change? And then number three is that cognitive load. How many pieces of feedback or corrections can they actually make? And then we cover some scenarios. Obviously, there's a lot more. And again, future episodes, I think it's worth discussing more things that we see because, again, this is kind of the hardest part of being a coach and also being able to do this stuff if you're coaching a large group. So you have six riders coming through the cone zone, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's two people out of the six that just have a lot to work on. So how do we manage that? But that's for a future episode.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, yeah, Tina, it was great chatting with you about this. I am excited for our next one. And coming up at the end of the month is the coaches convention, which you're going to be at, right?
Yeah, it's at Howler Bike Park, in the southern end of Missouri. I don't even know what town it's in, but yeah, it seems like it's a family-owned bike park. I think they like shuttle you to the top of the trails. So really excited to check that out. I'll be doing level one recertifications on Friday. And then on Saturday, there's individual like skills that people can sign up for just to learn. So I'll be doing those with Kate Nolan. She's from Brown County, Indiana. Trails I grew up riding on. So super awesome. She'll be there as well, along with Shams and Nicole, the directors of the BICP. So it should be fun. Looking forward to it.
And I'm looking forward to our next episode will be about how the convention went, get to hear some from of the instructor trainers that were there, as well as hear from the participants that are getting recertified and building on their skills. And I do wish I could be there, Tina.
Yeah, I
I think you
know.
guys are going to have an
As
absolute
well.
blast.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Awesome. Well, we will talk later. And again, just like last time, if you guys have any questions or anything, Travis at icp.bike. Got my email right this
Yeah.
time.
Tina at icp.bike.
And I hope you guys have a great rest of the evening or whatever time of day you're listening to this.
Yeah, whenever. Thanks for watching,
See ya.
listening. See ya.